given that customer profile that I'm creating. And so to start with, let's talk about what is PDW. And PDW is the parallel data warehouse. It's the massively parallel processing solution that's provided by Microsoft. Microsoft has partnered with Dell and HP for delivering this. The solutions are generally the same. There's a couple of variations in it. In all of the demos that I'm going to show basically the HP configuration. There's a slight difference between the HP and the Dell configurations, where HP solutions are 2 compute nodes for every 1 storage unit, and Dell is 3 compute nodes for every 1 storage unit. But from a performance perspective, it all ends up running to be about the same performance. Since it's an appliance solution, the entire thing is managed and partnered with Microsoft. There's one phone number that you call for all of your support. If you've got problems with disk, you've got problems with network, you've got problems with how the compute is working, if you need to do any software upgrades, any hardware upgrades, if there is a hardware failure, it's one person that you call your dedicated support person, and they're going to work with you to get that fixed. It's not a matter of putting it into this bucket where you need to call somebody for the network and you need to call this other person for storage. If there's something, it's all just one single number that you contact, and one point of contact to get it all done. And the entire solution comes pre-configured. It's a hardware-software solution. You can't just buy the licensing. You can't just buy some of the pieces. You buy the whole thing as a whole unit, and it comes ready to be used out of the box. And that's why it's an appliance. It's just there and ready for you to get into. Now, we're talking about the MPP. We're talking about massively parallel processing of your data. And that's quite a bit different from the way in which SMP works, the symmetric multiprocessing. What we're used to with SQL Server is the SMP solutions. We have lots of CPUs in our servers. Typically, we have more than one. With memory that's available, we have disks, network controllers. Every CPU has access to every single piece of memory, every single piece of disk, and every single piece of network. There's no segmentation of any of those resources on a per CPU basis. If a query is run and it needs just one CPU, it can run on one. If it needs 10 CPUs, it can run on 10 as long as you have that available. And up until PDW came out, everything basically was an SMP solution. Now, what MPP does is it segments out the CPUs from some of the resources that are out there. And so what you're going to be seeing is you're going to be seeing CPUs that are assigned to certain amounts of disk and certain amounts of memory, and they're physically segmented so that there's not going to be overlap and contention in trying to gain those resources for each CPU. And it's all put together on an internal network so that other applications and other pieces within your own network aren't going to be interfering with the processing and the work that's happening for your PDW. And that's kind of the difference between the SMP and the MPP. Now, with PDW, there's a few key features that come to mind when people are looking at it. It does provide that MPP processing, which we just talked about, which is that segmentation across the nodes. It leverages a distributed query engine. And this is a lot different than what happens just within SQL Server. So within SQL Server, you've got statistics, you've got a query engine that's going to jump in and it's going to create an execution plan that will just pull the data right out and stream it up to you as the data is put together. With PDW, it's a little bit different because there are sequential steps that happen to these serial plans. Your SQL query that you send to the PDW isn't just that one SQL query. Once it hits the distributed query engine, that one SQL query can be broken up into tens or hundreds of smaller queries that's going to pull the data together and then aggregate it back up into your final result set. And so you do have to work with those sequential steps. Sometimes data needs to be shifted around in order to move things around, but when you're dealing with lots of data, which PDW is geared for, you can move around terabytes and petabytes of data and get things where you need it to be and build these result sets off tons of data without a lot of effort. And that's what the distributed query engine will help you do. Now, I've talked to people before about how this all works, and some people have been like, well, hey, why don't I just create it myself? And there's a key feature part of that distributed query engine that you're not able to write yourself. There is statistics that's captured on all of the data that's in all of the different compute nodes that SQL Server does work on to figure out what's the best way to create out our own query engine. And so, I mean, execution plan. And so if you're working with it, you're going to find that it's going to be hard to engineer your own solution that's going to perform as well as the distributed query engine can perform. There is the in-memory column store that's available. This is one of the big key pieces that people like with PDW 2012. And the reason being is that you have the clustered column store that's available with PDW, which means that you only have to store one copy of your data. You don't have to have a clustered index that's there, that's the full size of your data, and then a column store on top of it. You can just have one copy of the data without having other non-clustered or just regular clustered index copies of the data out there. You do have integration with Hadoop through Polybase, and so if you do need to pull in that strong text searching capabilities that Hadoop provides for you with the number crunching that's within PDW, you get that strong partnership. And then compared to the other MPP solutions that are out there, it's widely accepted that PDW SQL Server 2012 has the lowest cost of ownership. I haven't seen anything that shows that the others are competing on a cost perspective, a TCO perspective at this point. Now, I've talked a little bit already about the PDW architecture, but I want to really kind of lay it out. There is a lot that goes into PDW. There's a lot of detail, and we don't have the time here in the next 45 minutes to talk about all the possible details and all the nicks and crannies and the things that can possibly go on with PDW, and so we're going to extrapolate a little bit. We're going to go a little bit high level, brush over some of the finer details, but just want to make sure that you guys understand what makes it different is what gives it the power that it has. And so when we're talking about PDW,